Hi, Howie's mom here. We're going to talk about Howie's upcoming molt, and I'm going to start by referencing some photos from her last molt. Here's a photo shortly before her molt where you can see her beginning to change color, and the thin film over her eyes was cracked from wear and tear. She really wasn't looking her best. So this picture was taken days before her molt, and you can see that she's lost all of her color, and she looks a little bit like a hamburger bun. Then Howie will start to look chalk white and pale. And when that starts happening, we'll start monitoring the lines on her shell to look for any separation and making sure that it thins. This will be the spot that we're monitoring. That exact spot needs to crack in order for her to be able to molt. And this is what it looks like when she's actually molting, and it'll take anywhere from 30 minutes to a few hours. And Howie's age, usually it takes her a few hours. And once she's done, she's dark in color and she'll come out looking very fresh. And when she's done with that, she begins to eat her shell to help herself remineralize. Alright, I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth while you watch a few old videos of Howie from this year, from her last molt till now. So there's a lot to cover on the topic of Howie molting. Many of you have been with us online for years and have experienced maybe up to 3 of her molts. For those of you that are just joining in, I'm going to do my best to get you up to speed. My most frequently asked questions at this time is, how often does Howie molt? Well, when Howie was a baby, she molted about every 8 weeks. As she grew, it became longer and longer between molts. But the exact timing between molts is not consistent, other than typically being between 6 and 8 months at her current age and size. Her last molt was 8 months between molts. I was genuinely hoping for 9 to 10 months, but right now it's been 6 months since her last molt. And Howie takes more than a month to actually molt. During that time, she doesn't eat. Howie is still eating, but not very much. For the next month, she will eat off and on until she finally stops eating and pre-molt begins. So she is on track for about the same length of time, 8 months. I know it feels very soon to be talking about it again since it's only been 6 months, but this is a long, long ride, you guys. So just to reiterate, we are still a ways from the big molt. I want to make sure everyone is informed and knows what's going on. I'll be putting a molting cave back into Howie's tank, and I won't be doing a whole lot of eating videos as her appetite has decreased. For everyone who's experiencing a Howie molt for the first time, yes, this is a scary situation. The majority of crabs die during molts or from failing to molt. Howie's old, like really, really old for her species. The average lifespan in the wild is only 2 to 3 years, and in captivity, it's about 3 to 5 years. And with excellent care, they can live up to 8 years. There are only a handful that have lived beyond that. While there's no world record holder, just know that Howie is old and beyond her years. I have done my absolute best to give her every advantage to make it through her molts. But it's not something I can interfere with. It's not like a snake shedding its skin. It's a complicated process. So right now, Howie will begin to eat less and less as she runs out of room in her shell. It's apparent to me that she is already starting to feel that way because her appetite is decreased and her need to find a burrow indicates that it's getting close to time for her to molt. And in order to molt, her body must produce a hormone called ecdysone, and that triggers the molting process. It tells her body to start making a new, larger mouth parts, esophagus, stomach lining, intestines for her new, larger body. She will also reabsorb minerals from her shell while simultaneously separating her nerves from it. This is when Howie will be her crabbiest because it's painful for her. Usually that takes place in the last week before she molts. So in a nutshell, or a crab shell, it's a race against time for Howie to regenerate vital parts before she starves. The larger she is, the longer it takes to grow new parts, and during this process, she doesn't eat. She's doing a lot of work on stored calories only. So during the next 2 months while we're waiting, I'm going to try to make as much normal content as possible while giving updates about her situation. Not every post will be about her molt, and warmer weather is coming, and I'm really hoping to give her some outdoor activities while she's still snacking on and off. I will be sprinkling in updates and videos about her molt, and I'll be talking about it and answering questions. But for the majority of the questions, you can find our Q&A section on my website, howiethecrab.com. It's all at the bottom there, and there's a lot of information to read if you guys are interested. And I want the entirety of this video to be extra educational, so I'm going to go ahead and attach the video that I previously made discussing the parts of Howie's molt after she molted. We took a deep dive and looked at the inside of her shell that she had molted. So that part is a little squeamish, so if you're not interested in watching that again, or if you're not interested in looking to see the parts that Howie molted, feel free to scroll. All right, thanks guys. All right, everybody, we're gonna talk about Howie's molt. This is the top of her shell, her little hamburger bun. It's called a carapace. And as you can see her eyes. They did molt with her. And here is the underside. It is smooth and slimy, and I am allergic to crabs, so hopefully I don't get a rash. But there you have it. That's her carapace. And now we'll look at her other parts. This is the bottom part of her. It did break apart. They didn't stay together. Let's take a closer look at some of the other structures in her. And these structures here are the old gills. There's many of them. They're kind of finger-like, almost like little feathers, and they help bring oxygen to her body. As long as they're moist, they work for her to breathe air. And then in here, this green part you'll see is her digestive tract. That was part of her mouth there. That's where it began. The reason it is green is because her last meal was the caviar. It was actually fish roe, but it had food coloring in it that was green. And so here is the top of her mouth there. You can see her little mustache. And then these little parts here were attached to her body to help move her mouthpieces. And what we're talking about when she had her issue is that she split the back of her leg there, and she lost pressure in her shell when she was molting, and that was my huge cause for concern during her molt, is that she couldn't maintain pressure to push out of her shell. So everything you see here was extraordinarily difficult for Howie to regenerate. But here she is over here, kind of dancing and playing around. Looks like she feels good. But continuing to look here, I'm going to try to flip this over and show you the underside. You can see more of her mouth and her third maxillipeds. She does kind of have teeth in there, but they're a little hard to see. They're not true teeth, but they do help grind up her food. The long, flat, white part is actually part of her cheek, like the side of her shell. The other side did fall off. It's very, very brittle. So even if I manipulate it and pick it up, it's going to fall apart. But those little strings there are what were attached to almost like tendons to help move her eyes and parts of her face. But as you can see here, her claws are very tough still. So those are probably the toughest part. She really won't eat those. But she's going to work on eating parts of, the inside fleshy parts and a lot of the crispy outer shell. Kind of like, potato chips for her. I know it may seem gross, but it is very healthy for her. Now let's go back and look at her underside one more time. These structures are actually part of her female anatomy. Those hold on to the eggs. Male crabs do not have those. So they kind of grip the egg sac to hold it underneath her in her apron. It's kind of very cool to see. There's so much more to crabs than just shedding their exoskeleton. It's a very intricate process, and I think you guys can now understand why it took a whole month. Oh, and see how brittle it is? It just falls apart, but I'll just give that back to Howie as I throw it in her cave. But even as I pick it up, everything just wants to fall apart. It's super brittle. And that little flap there is her poop flap, her anal opening, and that's part of her apron. That's where she goes to the bathroom, so that is right below her mouth for anyone who didn't get to see the poop video. Crabs' bodies are just very different than ours. There's just a lot of anatomy that is intricate and hard to explain. So I'm not a biologist, you guys. I'm just a crab mom, so I did my best here. All right, let's talk about how she makes her sound. All right, so here are kind of what her teeth look like a little bit. They do squeak together and make the little creaky door sound. And right here, the back side of her mustache, tap, tap, that is a very hard structure. It's almost as hard as her claws, but that helps her balance all of the structures in her face, because she does chew things like bone and she needs that extra structure and support around her mouth to be able to eat really hard things. Yeah, thanks for coming to our talk. Chances are I'm wrong about a lot of things, but this is just what I know because I'm a grandmom. But I hope you learned a lot and didn't get too grossed out. All right, bye guys.